Marcelo Villa, who is from here, from Argentina. He comes from the Planta Piloto de Ingeniería Química, PLAPICI, institution here in Argentina. And he got his PhD in Argentina, but did his postdoc at MIT. His lecture today will be on blocopolymers, and he will go all the way through from synthesis to discussing the properties of blocopolymers and different kinds of applications. So let us welcome our speaker.
First of all, I want to thanks to Ivan and Diana for this kind of invitation to be here in this morning. I will talk a little bit about blocopolymers, synthesis, some properties and characterization, and some applications. We are more dedicated to the synthesis and the characterization in our institute, but even though we do some application, or we try to do that. Just to know, we are going to talk about blocopolymers. Blocopolymers are very interesting materials because they have several properties that are better than homopolymers or even the blends of homopolymers. And these are the topics that I will try to cover in this talk. Well, the more simplest or the simplest blockopolymer that we can see is a linear diblockopolymer when we have two different monomers called A and B here. And maybe most of you know that this kind of material can be disordered or can be ordered in very nice domains and very nice structures depending on the temperature and depending on the conditions when we are going to put the system. Here we have the disordered part, both block and together, but in the ordered form, we can find different domains, and the good thing of this material are that these domains are in the nanometers scale, and then we are dealing with really nanometers materials. If we continue with this simple molecule that we have two different monomers together, we can draw a phase diagram. This phase diagram, we have two variables, or three, but at least two that we can plot. The volume fraction of each block in the blockopolymer and the product of the Florey-Highley interaction parameter between two blocks and the degree of polymerization. And depending on these parameters and the degree and the volume fraction, we can find different phases, or even though we can find the disordered state. For low components, or for low volume fraction of one component in the other, we can have either of the disordered phase or the next one that will be the spheres on one block in the matrix of the other block. If we increase a little bit the composition, we can find cylinders of one block that we are going to see later in a matrix on the other block. Here we have a very nice structure that is called xyloid, that is a co-continuous structure. And this structure is very complicated sometimes to find experimentally because the window of composition of the chi times n parameter is really small. If we go to increase the volume fraction of the component, we have lamella of each component, and the next part of the diagram, the diagram is symmetric to the first part. Well, the linear block polymers can be simple like this, when we have just two blocks, or we can have more complicated block polymers, linear block polymers. This one that is a tri-block, and we have two blocks in the ends that are of the same monomer and a center block of a different monomer. We can also have multi-block copolymers, but we can have also complicated structures like stars, Y structures, or stars with 3 different arms or 4 different arms, or even linear block polymers with more than 2 monomers, let's say 3, like this, when we have A, B, C monomers. These are the structures that are more complicated when we have 3 monomers in the structure. When we have A, B, and C, we can have different structures like lamella, for example, of the 3 monomers, or we can have more complicated structures like, for example, this, that we have cylinders of 1 monomer decorated with a sphere of another monomer in a matrix of the 3rd monomer. Well, from the point of view of the synthesis of this material, we have the conventional radical synthesis, that is the more common one. We have some new ones, or relatively new ones, related to the radical polymerization, that is the atom transfer radical polymerization or the group transfer radical polymerization, that are trying to control more the synthesis of the material, because we can have better control of the insertion of monomers in the chain. The ionic polymerization, and we are working with the anionic polymerization, is a very nice technique because we can get really nice model polymers, and it's almost one of the preferred for synthesis of block polymers, at least from the research point of view. Even though there are some industries that can prepare block polymers by anionic polymerization. And also we have other types of polymerization like Ziegler-Natta coordination polymerization or metallocene polymerization. About the anionic polymerization, that is the one that we are working in our lab, we got really model polymers with this advantage. One of them is the homogeneity of the polymers, because we have molar mass that are, this is the polydensity, NW times N, that is less than 1.1. Let's say all the molecules are the same in length, and then we have less complication when we try to do some relationship between properties and structure. Also, the composition is very nice because we can get one block first and the other block with the exact composition that we want. And the structures, because we can do different block polymers, diblock, triblock, linears, or even the more complicated structures like the stars, the Y polymers, etc. What About the anionic polymerization this is a living polymerization. Let's say that we can increase the molecular weight of the polymer, adding more monomer to the system, or we can do another block, adding a different monomer, and the polymerization will not stop. The only way to stop the polymerization is to kill with a terminator, and that's the reason why, using the appropriate one, we can do different block of polymers like ABC, for example, or ABA, or different structures. The disadvantage of this polymerization is that we have only some monomers that we can polymerize by anionic polymerization. We need some high purity system, let's say traces of oxygen, water, and other components can kill the reactive end, and then we have to work in high purity systems. We have to deal with organometallic initiators that are pyrophoric and sometimes complicated to manipulate. And also we have to polymerize the monomers just in organic solvent. We cannot use water, for example, for the polymerization. You have here some monomers, solvents, and initiators that usually we use in the anionic polymerization. We can polymerize vinyl and diethylenes, monomers like styrene, butadiene, isoprene, some polar monomers like acrylate or vinylpyrene, some cyclic monomers like ethylene oxide, propylene oxide, epsilon carbamazole, or some siloxanes cycles. We have to use organic solvents, as I mentioned before. We can use either non-polar or polar solvents. And we need an initiator compound, and usually we use some organic lithium compound, like N-butyllithium or Z-butyllithium, etc. This is the reactor that we use for the anionic synthesis. All the materials are purified in a vacuum line, and they are then fractionated in different ampoules or balloons. We connect all the monomers and initiator, everything to the reactor, and then we need to clean the reactor. This is a cleaning section, and this is the true reactor. We connect this to the vacuum line. We distillate in the vacuum line the solvent, and after that we put here the cleaning agent that usually is an organometallic material. We clean all the reactor. After that we cool this and we cut this by heat, and we have the reactor ready for the synthesis. Once we have here the monomer in the reactor, by using these seals, we add the monomer, the first monomer, then the initiator. We can grow the first block of the copolymer. After that, we add the second monomer, for example, in a diblock copolymer. And after we grow the second block, we add the terminator agent, and we finalize the polymerization. How we characterize the block of polymers that we prepare? Well, we have to measure the molar mass distribution. For this, we use size exclusion chromatography. From the molar mass distribution, we can get the average molar mass, like the number, the weight, etc. and also we can get the polydispersity of the polymer. For the composition, we can use infrared to check for the monomers. We can also use infrared for functional groups or to determine the macrostructure of the polymer. But usually we use nuclear magnetic resonance to get the composition, the macrostructure, and also the tacticity if we have some monomer that can have different tacticity positions. From the thermal point of view, we use differential scanning calorimetry for the transition temperatures to get, if we have a block that is semi-crystalline, we can get the enthalpy of fusion and crystallization, and also the degree of crystallinity of this block. And we use thermodynamic analysis to get the stability, the thermal stability, and to know the degradation, but also we can get the composition of the components. From the rheological mechanical point of view, we can get transition temperature from the rheology of the material. And this, I will show you some results. We can measure the dynamic or the dynamic modulus, and from this information we can get the transitions. And also we can do some mechanical testing on the material depending on the structures of the block components. For the morphology, we can use scanning electron microscopy, SEM, or transmission electron microscopy, TEM, to see the surface of the polymer or the bulk structure of the polymer. For the bulk structure, usually we use a small angle X-ray scattering, and we can also use wide angle to measure the crystallinity of the block that is semi-crystalline. This is relatively new, but we can also use atomic force microscopy to see the structure, but particularly in the thin films is very useful. Well, about the composition, here you have two infrared. The green one is a polystyrene, is the first block, and the top one, the red one, is the infrared of the blocopolymer. In this case, is a polystyrene polycaprolactone blocopolymer, and we can see some particular bands that are attributed to one block, and from them we can estimate the composition or either check about the presence of each block in the blocopolymer. From NMR, we can see here, for example, for the same blocopolymer, polystyrene polycaprolactone, we can get the composition, the molar fraction of each block, or the weight fraction of each block, just measuring the area of some characteristic protons. In this case, for the polycaprolactone, we use the two protons that are close in the carbon, close to the oxygen. And for the styrene, we see the 5 protons that are attached to the carbon in the aromatic ring. And from these two areas, and the number of protons that we have in each part, we can calculate the molar composition and then translate this to weight fraction. From morphology, we can get different things. These are a cut of the sample, of the bulk sample, and we can see by TEM. In the lamellar one, that is when we have two blocks or two plaques or something like this in the system, we can see some lines, And also we can do the small annulus X-ray scattering, and we can see the peaks that are characteristic of the spacing in the system. We have the first peak, and after that, the second, third, fourth, and these are related to the spacing that they have in the real part. Cylinders are also very nice morphology because we can get an hexagonal package of cylinders in a matrix of the other block. Here are two TMs of samples that we prepare oriented. I will talk about this in the next part. But if we cut the cylinders in this part, we can see the 6 spots related to the cylinders, and this is the corresponding Sachs pattern. If we cut the material in the other way, we can see some lines that are related to the cylinders that are horizontal to the cut, and these are the Sachs pattern corresponding to this structure. For the spheres, usually we have a BCC structure, and this is the TM that we can see from the sample. From the Sachs pattern, we can see the first reflection, but after that, some reflections are eliminated by the form factor, and then sometimes we cannot find some of the reflections. And the Shiloh, that is the co-continuous phase, this was one of the last one that was identified. We can find different structures depending on the cutting of the material when we see this through TEM. And these are the Sachs reflections that are characteristics to this co-continuous phase. This is an amplification of this part of the Sachs that is not so defined, but we can amplify and find some of the peaks that are there. Well, if we remove some of the blocks, we can see some nice morphology. This is, for example, the Shiloh morphology when we remove one of the blocks. Or this one is another morphology, but in an ABC tri-block polymer. Moving to a little bit to the more complicated morphology I showed before in the first part of this talk. Here we have, for example, a polystyrene matrix, and we have cylinders that we have different blocks. And this is a TEM picture without staining. We see the PDMS, that is the silicon part of the block polymer, because of the characteristic of the polymer. We can differentiate this polymer from the carbon ones. But even though the morphology is not well defined, if we not stain the same. We can also stain some of the blocks, for example with osmium tetroxide, we selectively stain the polyisoprene block, and then we can identify where the polyisoprene block is in the morphology. And we can also use another staining material like methyl iodide, which selectively stain the poly 2 vinyl pyridine. and then we can find when is now the polytuberculin in the morphology. Well, as I mentioned before, we can have more complicated morphology if we have a ABC triglycopolymer. For example, in this case, we have a matrix of one block, cylinders of another block, but the cylinders are decorated with a third block. And this is the morphology, and if we cut this is what we see by TM in some cases. If we pass to thin-film, previous one was the bulk morphology. In thin-film morphology, we have different parts because we have to accommodate the block polymer to a two-dimensional film, basically. And then we can find different morphology that we found in the bulk. And the morphologies can change also depending on the height or the number of monolayers that are deposited on the substrate. Here we have, for example, for two thin film, we have a disordered state, and here is the corresponding AFM that we are seeing of this part of the field. If we increase the height of the film, we can find, for example, in this glucopolymer that is an ABA glucopolymer, cylinders of polystyrene in a matrix of polybutadiene, and the cylinders are accommodated perpendicular to the substrate. If we increase a little more the height of the film, we can find, instead of cylinders perpendicular, we found cylinders that are now parallel to the substrate. This is the morphology that we see in the TM. If we increase a little more, we can find some kind of lamella, but this, instead of the near lamellas, we have perforated lamella. Also, we can find some parts where the morphology coexists between two morphologies, and also we can repeat some of the morphology that we found if we continue increasing the height of the film. Then, if we can control the height of the film, we can control the morphology that we want to have on the substrate. This is a similar picture than the previous one, but with a different glucopolymer. In this case, it's a ABC glucopolymer, but also we can see that we can find the disordered state, some cylinders perpendicular or parallel to the surface, on some perforated lamella depending on the height of the film. I can pass you the reference after that if you want. Usually I put in the bottom of the slide. Also, we can study the defects that we have in our film. In this case, we have a monolayer of a polystyrene polytuvinyl pyridine annealed at 260 degrees C. This is the AFM picture. This is the defect analysis we can find when we have 6 neighbors to each cylinder, or the pink dots here that represent some defect when we have, instead of 6, we have just 5 neighbors. Or the blue one, when we, instead of 5, we have 7. These are different defects, and this is a Fourier transform of this image. And about rheology that I told you before, we can measure the G prime, the elastic modulus, and the loss modulus. I represented here just the elastic modulus. This is a block of polymer that we prepare in our lab, that is a polybutadiene, polydimethylsiloxane block. And we can see different regions. In the first part, here we have cylinders. We check that by another technique, LASAX, for example. We have cylinders. If we increase the temperature, we pass and we have an order transition from cylinders to spheres, and because that we have an increase in the elastic modulus of the material. And after that we have the order disorder transition when the modulus falls down, and here the material becomes a liquid, then the elastic modulus is almost zero. I don't know the time.
So since you started a little bit later, so maybe 15 minutes.
Okay. I can move to the second part, or we can do a break here if you want, and we continue.
Okay, so
After that.
are there some questions? Do we have questions? Yes, please.
It was a very nice picture of the change of morphology depending on the thickness of the layer.
Okay.
I'm quite curious, how did you prepare this different thickness? It was less than 50 nanometers, like 20, 30 nanometers.
Usually you can work with the concentration of polymer. I will talk a little more in the second part, but you can play with the concentration of polymer in the solvent and the condition when you prepare the thin film. Usually the thin films are prepared by the spin coating, and then
What?
by a spin coating.
Ah,
And then in the spin coating, you can play with the RPM of the spinning, and also, as I told before, with the concentration of polymer that you are dropping on the substrate.
so that wasn't just one, it was separate.
No, that was because you can have, for example, also different parts in the substrate. Or you can play with the substrate, modifying the surface of the substrate, and also you can get some different shape of the film in different parts of the substrate. But this was just one continuous film
It was continuous film
Yes.
of different thickness,
with different thickness depending on the condition of the substrate.
and the substrate was, what was the substrate?
Usually are silicon wafer, but usually you can also modify the surface of the substrate by adding another polymer before to eliminate the preferential absorption of one block to the substrate, for example. And then in that case, you can play with the surface of the substrate in order to have different morphologies or different height of the film.
Are there more questions? Yes.
Yes. What is the thickness of the thin layers you have?
In which one?
The one you showed just recently, that are thin films.
Yes.
Which is the thickness you
Here, usually, here you have the scale
okay, but here.
between 0 and 60 nanometers, and the film is going from 5, 10 nanometers to 6 nanometers. What you have here is you have here the number of monolayers that are deposited on the substrate. It's going from 3 to 11.
More questions?
So in this reference, for example, they have more information like why is it changing and the fault like.
Yes, you can find here everything about. I just show the main part of the work, but you can find here all the things related to the how to prepare the film and how to get the difference.
Like why is it changing? For example, like the surface and the bulk terms.
No. They prepare these kind of things with one block of polymer and one concentration of block of polymer, and they get different height of the film playing with the substrate, and they try to characterize how the height of the film affects the morphology that we are going to find in the film. And in the other one, if you want here, they also have the simulation of the structures that you get for different parts of the film.
So-
I say it's a similar work, but with a different block of polymer.
So this is simulation.
The bottom part are simulations of the material that we get. The top part is the AFM that we measure. This is an schematic representation of the film, and the bottom part you have the simulation of how the material is organized in the film.
Yeah, I just have a quick question about the images of A. Are those taken by FM or those by TEM?
No, this is by AFM in this case, because you are scanning just the surface of the film, and from the surface you can see this part, and after that you can guess what is the organization of the material in the film.
I have a question.
Yes.
Generally, what would be the largest size of the block in block polymers?
You can do any size in the polymers. The problem is, I can go up to the face area, that the phase separation depends on the degree of polymerization. And then, if you have a very high molecular weight block of polymer, you have a strong segregation. And then it's very complicated to move the material from this side. Usually, people work more close to the dissolver phase, which means that we work with molecular weights that are lower. Here we usually, for most of the block of polymers, we are in the order of 10,000 or 20,000 grams per mole. But you can do whatever you want. You can do a block of polymer of 1 million grams per mole. But the problem is that we are going to this part, and also the transition of the order-disorder transition will be very high. And usually what happens is that you cannot move so much the polymer, you cannot play so much, because the temperature, the order-disorder transition temperature is higher than the degradation temperature. And then we cannot play with the temperature to move the material in different phases, because we have to go up to the degradation temperature, and degradation will occur before the result.
Are there more questions?
You told it was possible to remove one of the microdomains or one of the blocks
Well, this is in the second part,
Ah.
but I can tell you some.
Okay.
Depending of the material, depending of the blocks, you can use, for example, oxone for degradation of polybutadiene block, or you can use most of the techniques I will show in the next part. Use reactive ion etching with different reactive ions to degrade different blocks, which are reactive to different blocks. And depending on the block also, for example, if you do a polycaprolactone or polylactic acid block, which are biodegradable, you can use some biodegradation to remove that block. For some block, depending on the structure, you can use also hydrolysis for some monomers. There are different techniques that you can use for different blocks.
Okay, so I think we should.
Bulk state, yes. Even in the bulk state, I'm
Uh,
writing in fields that.
Even in the bulk, anyway, in the bulk is more complicated because you are usually removing the surface first, but you cannot go so deep in the bulk, except for the gyroin morphology, which is a co-continuous morphology. If not, for example, it's more complicated to degrade the spheres inside the matrix or the cylinders inside the matrix.
Okay, I propose we take the break. We are just a couple minutes behind the schedule, but